Tonight on NewsWatch, assessing the danger. Do radical Muslims pose a threat to our security? Is the Muslim community in America doing enough to stop them? Washington wants to know. Plus, watching across the world, how will the hearings in Washington play in the Muslim world? And miles to go before they rest. A group of road warriors cross the country defending the right to life. All this and more tonight on NewsWatch. And good evening, everyone. I'm Lee Webb. It is one of the most controversial hearings of the year. Its title, The Extent of Radicalization of the American Muslim Community and that community's response. The man behind it, Republican Congressman Peter King of New York. He wants to know if Muslims here at home are doing enough to combat terrorism. Critics say the hearings go too far and paint all Muslims as terrorists. A new Gallup poll, though, shows 52% of Americans say these hearings are appropriate. 38% say they are not. CBN News terrorism analyst Eric Stakelback was at today's hearing. We will hear from him in a moment. But first, John Jessup brings us some of today's dramatic testimonies.
The purpose of the hearing was to look into how some American Muslims are being radicalized and turned to terror. But a theme running throughout was the legitimacy of even investigating terrorists all tied to one religion. Democrat Sheila Jackson Lee said that only bolsters al-Qaeda's claim that America is anti-Islamic.
President Obama recognized that through our words and deeds, we can either play into al-Qaeda narrative and messaging, or we can challenge it and thereby undermine it. We are determined to undermine it. This hearing today is playing into al-Qaeda right now around the world.
The Republican congressman who called the hearing disagreed.
Let me make it clear today that I remain convinced that these hearings must go forward, and they will. To back down would be a craven surrender to political correctness and an abdication of what I believe to be the main responsibility of this committee, to protect America from a terrorist attack.
Emotions ran high on both sides of the issue. Muslim Congressman Keith Ellison condemned the hearing and talked tearfully about a Muslim paramedic who died rescuing people on 9/11.
Mohammed Salman Hamdani was a fellow American who gave his life for other Americans. His life should not be identified as just a member of an ethnic group or just a member of a religion, but as an American who gave everything for his fellow Americans.
On the other side, Melvin Bledsoe, who talked about his son Carlos, how he was lured and radicalized by al-Qaeda in Yemen, and how he eventually murdered an Army recruiter in Arkansas. He said Americans must wake up to the threat of what's happening to its Muslim children.
If I can save one other child from going through what my family gone through, or the victim family went through, then I think my trip here to this committee were worthwhile.
One of the hearing's opponents went to the heart of their concern and asked a pro-hearing Muslim if all Muslims in America should be singled out by the police.
I don't agree with blind profiling. That's unconstitutional. However, smart law enforcement that doesn't waste our resources on investigating people that would not have a high propensity towards radicalization, I think, is smart also.
Today's theatrics may only be a primer. Congressman King insists this is only the first in a series of upcoming hearings. John Jessup, CBN News, Washington.
Our terrorism analyst, Eric Stakelback, joins us now from Capitol Hill. As I mentioned, he was at the hearing. Eric, what was it like there? Have you seen anything quite like that hearing before?
You know, Lee, I haven't. It was an electric atmosphere here on Capitol Hill. An overflow crowd, Lee. It took me about a half hour to get into the building. We had lines down the street, heavy security. As you know, Peter King, who ran these hearings, has a terrorist threat against his life from overseas, and I'm sure that's only increased after today. A large Muslim contingent here, Lee, and pretty telling, in the room I was sitting as I was watching the hearings, there was some cheerleading, anti-Peter King cheerleading. When some of the congressmen, congresswomen made a comment against the hearings, there was some cheerleading among some of the Muslim constituents sitting around me, so telling.
Eric, critics of the hearing said this was little more than a witch hunt. Do you think that anything was accomplished?
Lee, ultimately, I was disheartened by these hearings, and here's why. Every Democrat, to a man, before they spoke, before they gave their 5-minute statement, said how they opposed these hearings, how they were basically Islamophobic and went against American values. But one witness, Zuhdi Jasser, had a very interesting exchange with Congressman Cedric Richmond from Louisiana. I want to roll on that right now. It was a very interesting exchange, Lee. Let's listen.
We can have an honest dialogue about race. We can have an honest dialogue about religion if we talk about the fact that it's not just the Muslim religion or the Islamic religion that we're targeting, that it's a broad spectrum.
But 220 arrests of terror cases in the last 2 years, 180 plus were Muslims. So you're going to waste all this time discussing all the other faiths, which I can't help you with, while we have a Muslim problem that I can help you with, not from most Muslims, a minority, but we're going to waste all that time and resources because we're worried about offending Muslims because of political correctness?
Now, bear in mind, Lee, that Zuhdi Jasser, who made that statement, is a Muslim, a true moderate Muslim, and he had to push back against all the Democrats on the committee, as I said, to a man. It was opposed these hearings, Lee. To me, that was disheartening because national security, Islamic terrorism, which affects every American regardless of political persuasion, should not be a political football, but that's what I saw here on Capitol Hill today.
Eric, the bottom line here is the question, does the Muslim community in the United States bear some responsibility with helping American law enforcement and Homeland Security, and what is that role for them to play?
Lee, you hit the nail on the head. At the end of the day, fighting back against Islamic radicalism in America has to start with Muslims here. It can come in many forms. Muslims have to speak up, especially at the mosques, Lee. If they see radical activity in their midst, they have to say something, go to the FBI. Now, a lot of the witnesses today made a great point that one prominent American Muslim group, CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, actively discourage American Muslims from speaking to the FBI and speaking to law enforcement. That mentality among the American Muslim community, at least among some segments, has to change.
All right, Eric Steckel back on Capitol Hill. Eric, thanks for your insights. And we will have more from Eric a little bit later on. After the hearing, a group of religious leaders came together to take a stand against the framing of the hearing. They call it Muslim bigotry.
That we stand together, shoulder to shoulder, against extremism, bigotry, and hate, discrimination against people of religion, whether in the United States or abroad. We'll stand together against discrimination against minority, with Christians, or anti-Semitism. We stand together shoulder to shoulder because our religion, all of us, call us to stand as one family.
A right for a Christian is a right for a Muslim, a Jew, a secular, or any other faith in America. And thus we are concerned that a security hearing that focuses on one faith group exclusively serves only to amplify the Islamophobia that we know exists.
The faith leaders agreed that radicalization should be investigated, but disagree that singling out one faith group is the answer. The White House says it welcomes help from Capitol Hill in the fight against Islamic radicals. Jennifer Wishon is at the White House with more reaction.
The administration says it welcomes congressional involvement on this issue, but it's taking a different approach. Instead of looking exclusively at radical Islam, the administration is examining radicalization in general. Administration officials have warned against guilt by association of Muslims and insist that Muslim communities must be protected from intimidation.
And we also believe that Muslim Americans are very much part of the solution here and not the problem. It is because of the cooperation with the Muslim American community that we are able to do the things we are able to do to prevent attacks, and it is that very cooperation that we seek going forward and that has been so helpful.
Carney says the administration is in the process of developing a strategy to prevent radicalization that leads to violence and says details will be released soon. He says the administration believes this is a very serious issue. At the White House, Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
And potential presidential candidates are weighing in on the King hearings. Former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty is one of the GOP favorites. He recently shared his thoughts on the hearings with our chief political correspondent, David Brody.
There is an element within Islam that is radical, that has jihadist intentions or declarations. They believe it's okay to use violence and force and destruction to achieve their means. And for some of them, they view people who do not share their values or their beliefs or their faith as proper objects of violence. And again, that's not all Muslims, that's not all of Islam, but there is an element within it that is radical, that is willing to use violent means to achieve their ends, and we can't be Pollyannish about that.
You can hear more of our interview with Tim Pawlenty and other potential candidates on David's blog, The Brody File. It's on our website, cbnnews.com. And coming up tonight, we will explore how these radical Islamic hearings are playing in the Arab world. And are they hurting President Obama's efforts to smooth relations? Plus, driven by faith, abortion opponents hope their cross-country caravan will stop Planned Parenthood.
It has been and remains one of the most feared afflictions of our time. And when you hear the word, you have to ask yourself, will I get cancer? The fact is, as many as 60% of cancer cases can be prevented. Internationally renowned cancer expert Dr. Robert A. Washer's new book, A Cancer Prevention Guide for the Human Race, reviews the science behind cancer risk and prevention. This may be the most important book you will ever read. A Cancer Prevention Guide for the Human Race, available now at Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com, Dog Ear Publishing, and other fine booksellers.
When you look in the mirror, can you imagine erasing years of aging?
That's what I used to look like.
Lifestyle Lift takes only about an hour. See the difference immediately.
I'm Linda. I'm 70 years old. Can you believe it?
Call now for a free information kit. It's quick, affordable, and takes only about an hour. Lifestyle Lift, a breakthrough medical procedure that helps remove wrinkles, frown lines, and sagging skin. Call now for a free information kit. Consultations are free. Call Lifestyle Lift today.
Attention investors, now is the time to protect your retirement accounts and investments. Excessive government spending is devaluing the US dollar and high rates of inflation are coming. Gold has tripled since 2001 and some experts predict the prices will climb another 100%. Buy gold now, direct and wholesale with United Gold Group. The demand for gold around the world is higher than ever. Foreign countries like China and India are buying up gold at record rates. Why? What do they know that you don't?
Call now and get your Gold Investors Kit absolutely free. Call in the next 5 minutes and receive The Secret to Owning Gold in Your Retirement Account, also absolutely free. Just call 1-800-758-5070. That's 1-800-758-5070.
This could be the most important call you make this year. United Gold Group, investing in America's future.
Wisconsin's state capitol building erupted in protest again today as angry union workers rushed the building. The protesters were mad that state Senate Republicans used a surprising procedural move to strip some public employees of their collective bargaining rights. That's the bill that Democrats had stalled for 3 weeks by fleeing the state. The vote brought the legislative standoff to a quick end, but it only made the political situation worse. Police placed the building under lockdown after thousands of union workers stormed the building. Democrats called the vote a political Pearl Harbor, if you will, of workers' issues. But Republican Governor Scott Walker said this will spare the jobs of more than 1,000 state workers.
But it ultimately allows us the tools at both the state and the local level to balance our budgets, and to balance our budgets not just now, but into the future. This is ultimately about a commitment to the future.
Wisconsin's House is expected to pass the bill, and Walker says he will sign it as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the federal government's budget problems grew larger last month. The budget deficit grew by more than $222 billion in February. That's the largest one-month increase in history. Defunding Planned Parenthood is a key part of that budget debate. Pro-life activists are turning up the heat on that organization. A group of women is on a cross-country campaign to stop taxpayer funding of America's largest abortion provider. John Jessup caught up with them during a stop in Pennsylvania.
Call it the Exposed Planned Parenthood Express, a charter bus whose passengers are on a mission to draw attention to the abortion debate and call on elected officials to join their cause.
That's why we care about who gets elected. Laws save lives. And we know that defunding Planned Parenthood is going to save lives of innocent unborn children.
Former Republican Congresswoman Marilyn Musgrave, now with the pro-life group Susan B. Anthony List, leads the week-long tour. By the time they wrap up, they will hit about a dozen stops in 7 states.
Pro-life advocates feel momentum is on their side. With a new GOP-controlled House that has made defunding Planned Parenthood one of its top priorities, they want to make sure pro-abortion lawmakers hear their message loud and clear.
Planned Parenthood does not speak for women.
At this rally just north of Philadelphia, the group thanked Pennsylvania Congressman Mike Fitzpatrick and Patrick Meehan for the recent House votes to defund Planned Parenthood. They believe voter outrage over out-of-control spending in Washington should mean the end of taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. They say especially in light of recent undercover video involving Planned Parenthood workers and actors posing as juvenile victims of sex trafficking.
Instead of being rescued and protected, instead of being the abuse being reported, these clinics are covering up the abuse and are facilitating the abuse with these secret abortions and with these powerful hormonal drugs.
The campaign triggered a counter tour, with Planned Parenthood supporters protesting at the same exact stops.
Without Planned Parenthood, there's many women that wouldn't be able to afford their regular checkups, that wouldn't be able to afford monthly birth control, and it would be devastating for all women.
But pro-life leaders say there's a simple solution.
If you really want to just do women's services, just separate the two. It's very easy to do, and don't ask our tax dollars to fund abortion, period.
They want the Senate to follow the House's lead and say they'll continue applying pressure and rolling ahead with the 2012 elections in their sights. John Jessup, CBN News, Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
Up next, witch hunt or wake-up call? We will have more reaction on today's hearing on the threat of radical Muslims in America.
The doctor said to me, "Peggy, you don't understand. Pancreatic cancer is inoperable and incurable." And he says, "Well, Peggy, you've got 2 months to live." It was like he was telling me, go to the store. There was no compassion. Yeah, it was heartbreaking. My life was an hourglass. I was home, laying on the couch, just dying. My sister Pam called the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. When I got there, I knew that I was going to be cared for. I met with the doctor after the tests were done and said, "How long do I have?" And he looked at me and he said, "Peggy, we did a lot of tests on you, and I never saw one thing stamped on the bottom of your foot that said you were going to die in 2 months. You have no expiration date." And I thought, wow.
Cancer Treatment Centers of America is unlike any other cancer hospital, full of hope, committed to your fight. We use every weapon: surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, nutrition, spiritual support, and mind-body medicine. We surround you with a real team, working together, all under one roof.
Each time I went back to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, I responded better. My tumors were shrinking. Came back in September again, and they still couldn't see anything. I said, "You're kidding me." We'll see how it goes. We'll keep testing, but we can't see the tumors anymore.
Please call the number on your screen to speak with an oncology information specialist and receive a life-changing information kit and DVD packed with valuable information. Call now and learn about treatment options you may not even know exist.
It's really unbelievable how one doctor can tell me I have 2 months to live. And then I go to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America and they saved my life. Hope is a mainstay. Hope is everything.
Don't give up. Your fight is our fight. Call Cancer Treatment Centers of America today.
There is nothing radical or un-American in holding these hearings. Congressional investigation of Muslim American radicalization is the logical response to the repeated and urgent warnings which the Obama administration has been making in recent months.
That's Congressman Peter King defending his hearings today on radicalization of Muslims here in the U.S. We want to explore the hearings more and find out how it could be playing in other parts of the world. Senior international correspondent George Thomas is with me here in the studio, and Eric Stakelback is still on Capitol Hill. George, let me begin with you. How will this play, particularly in the Arab and Muslim world?
Well, I thought I would bring just a few of the top newspapers in some of the critical countries where this matters. This particular event is taking place. Let me go to Egypt first. 3 weeks after the revolution there, here's the headline from a major newspaper there. It says, U.S. Congress provocative hearings fans anti-Islam sentiment. To Al Jazeera, based in Qatar, Doha. This is the headline on their network. Rising anti-Muslim rhetoric. A congressional hearing on the so-called radicalization of American Muslims. To Pakistan, major newspaper there, the Dawn newspaper, headline there, radicalization, hearings reignite U.S. Muslim debate. To Saudi Arabia, a key ally in the region, nothing. So it's interesting to see what they say. Clearly, what you are going to see, the narrative played out in the days and weeks ahead, is that this confirms to the Muslims around the world that the Muslim Ummah, it is an Arabic word for the Muslim community. The Muslim Ummah is under attack by the United States, by the Christian nation called the United States. And this is how it is clearly going to be seen all across the Middle East and the Muslim world.
Eric, when you hear George read those things, I mean, there's no question that that causes some concern. I guess the response would be, well, the Arab world hated us anyway.
Lee, you took the words out of my mouth. No matter what we do, the Islamists and the Arab world in general, they're going to use it against us. You think of Guantanamo Bay, you think of Abu Ghraib, you think of the invasion of Iraq, the invasion of Afghanistan. The Arab world, the Muslim world, will find a way to use this as a hammer against America. Basically, look at the Muhammad cartoons, Lee. Another example, some cartoons of Islam's prophet Muhammad were drawn by a Danish cartoonist a few years ago, and massive riots ensued throughout the Muslim world, and people were killed over it. So,
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, Eric, the Muslims who testified today insist that this is a problem that they have to tackle themselves. Do you believe they're up to it?
Largely, Lee, no. They haven't shown that they are up to it. People like Zuhdi Jasser, who testified today, yes, absolutely. An anti-Sharia, anti-jihad Muslim, absolutely. I've met such Muslims here, Lee, working for CBN, covering this issue for the past 6 years. I've met Muslims who oppose jihad and Sharia, but either they're not vocal enough about it, Lee, or they're too scared to speak out. I spoke to one Muslim leader in North Carolina, of all places, just last year, Lee, who told me, look, there's too much of an insular vibe, an insular feeling among the Muslim community in America. We're self-segregated. We have to be more vocal and more open, especially about the jihadists in our midst.
George, I was trying to, as a Christian, think back to the early 90s when a pastor in Florida murdered an abortion doctor. Just a couple of years later, we had the Oklahoma City bombing, and there were some Christian/religious undertones to the motives there. And I was trying to think, how would I react as a Christian if a non-believing representative or legislator decided to hold hearings on Christianity or the radicalization of Christianity? How would I respond? Is that a legitimate concern?
It is. However, as was pointed out by some of the panelists today at those hearings, clearly the majority of the attacks that have taken place against Americans around the world come from a particular set of people. You cannot ignore that fact. It's a blaring fact. And until we decide to tackle this head on, look, the question has been made, will these hearings fuel Al-Qaeda likes around the world to go after terrorist attacks, to encourage? And I got a chance to interview a Saudi expert today, and here's what he said. There are concerns today made at this testimony in Congress that, in essence, that holding such a testimony will fuel the Al-Qaedas, the Hezbollahs, the Muslim Brotherhoods around the world to attack America. What's your view on that?
I mean, I think Al-Qaeda and Hamas and everybody has been fueled for a long time, and these are just excuses for them probably to even increase their attacks. They follow a very specific Islamic agenda, world domination, whether this hearing takes place or not.
And that is the key that people need to understand, and I think Representative King was trying to make in the point in holding these hearings, that this is ultimately a goal for control of the world and the banner of Islam, in essence, sweeping across the world.
All right, George and Eric, thanks for your insights, and we'll be right back.
The doctor said to me, Peggy, you don't understand. Pancreatic cancer is inoperable and incurable. And he says, well, Peggy, you've got 2 months to live. It was like he was telling me, go to the store. There was no compassion. Yeah, it was heartbreaking. My life was an hourglass. I was home, laying on the couch, just dying. My sister Pam called the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. When I got there, I knew that I was going to be cared for. I met with the doctor after the tests were done and said, how long do I have? And he looked at me and he said, Peggy, we did a lot of tests on you, and I never saw one thing stamped on the bottom of your foot that said you were going to die in 2 months. You have no expiration date. I thought, wow.
Cancer Treatment Centers of America is unlike any other cancer hospital, full of hope, committed to your fight. We use every weapon: surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, nutrition, spiritual support, and mind-body medicine. We surround you with a real team, working together, all under one roof.
Each time I went back to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, I responded better. My tumors were shrinking. Came back in September again, and they still couldn't see anything. I said, you're kidding me. We'll see how it goes. We'll keep testing, but we can't see the tumors anymore.
Please call the number on your screen to speak with an oncology information specialist and receive a life-changing information kit and DVD packed with valuable information. Call now and learn about treatment options you may not even know exist.
It's really unbelievable how one doctor can tell me I have 2 months to live. And then I go to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America and they saved my life. Hope is a mainstay. Hope is everything.
Don't give up. Your fight is our fight. Call Cancer Treatment Centers of America today.
Finally, most would agree that twins share a special bond, and that couldn't be more true for two sisters in Indiana. They have similar names, Sharon and Chardee. They have the same birthday, of course. Now they also have the same delivery date. And they're the mothers of two baby girls. The 22-year-olds had two daughters, born just 2 hours apart at the same hospital. But the similarities don't end there.
2 hours after my sister was induced, I started feeling it real bad. My mom had the, camera, and she's trying to run and show Chardee as she's about to push, so it was crazy. My mom was so excited.
They're both 21 inches. Right?
Yeah,
they were both 21 inches
She was
long.
5% of babies are born face up, and it just so happened that both of us had babies that were face up.
It's amazing. The sisters say they are thrilled to have two girls that will grow up together. They hope the girls will share a common bond like they did. Great. That's all for this edition of NewsWatch. Remember, you can email us your comments and questions at newswatch@cbn.com. And be sure to join us on cbnnews.com at noon tomorrow for a special half-hour program as we look at these hearings going on in New York on the radicalization of Muslims here in the U.S. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Good night.